In the annals of European royalty, no sovereign has earned such universal condemnation from scholars as this particular Spanish ruler. Every academic who has examined his 33-year reign reaches an identical verdict. Never has a more twisted, more barbaric, more sexually disturbed individual worn the crown of Spain. But the carefully crafted mythology surrounding royal marriages? The supposed nobility of blue-blooded unions? It's all elaborate fiction designed to conceal a reality so grotesque it defies imagination. Ferdinand VII didn't merely govern his kingdom. He transformed the royal residence into a chamber of horrors that would shock even the most experienced madam of the underworld. Picture this: Madrid's royal palace, October 1819. The autumn wind rattles the ornate windows as servants scurry through marble corridors, their footsteps echoing ominously. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows on gilded walls, creating an atmosphere thick with anticipation and dread. The air itself seems heavy with the weight of centuries-old traditions about to be shattered forever. Inside the most luxurious bedchamber in all of Spain sits a trembling 16-year-old girl. Maria Josefa Amalia, Princess of Saxony, clutches her rosary with white knuckles. Raised behind convent walls, she possesses the innocence of a child who genuinely believes infants arrive via flower stalks. Her German attendants, too mortified to explain marital duties, have simply adorned her in pristine white silk and abandoned her to fate. The door creaks open. What enters defies every fairy tale she's ever heard. A corpulent 35-year-old man stumbles forward, his gouty legs barely supporting his bulk. His thick lips protrude grotesquely, and his eyes burn with predatory hunger. Yet this repulsive appearance pales compared to the anatomical nightmare concealed beneath his royal robes. Ferdinand suffered from a medical condition so extreme that modern physicians still debate its origins. His reproductive anatomy was monstrously distorted, impossibly thin at the base, yet expanding to the width of a human fist at its terminus, stretching to nearly 2 feet in length. Imagine an innocent convent-raised child confronted with such an abomination. The young queen's terrified shriek pierces the palace walls as she bolts from the matrimonial bed. But her nightmare has only begun. Ferdinand, drunk on wine and entitlement, gives pursuit. Picture it: a morbidly obese monarch stumbling around the bedchamber, chasing his teenage bride, who flees for her very life. Across Persian carpets and marble floors. Enraged by this humiliation, Ferdinand burst from the chamber completely naked, his deformity on full display, screaming at the queen's ladies-in-waiting. He branded them as incompetent fools, demanding they prepare his bride within 15 minutes. These poor women, including the queen's own sister-in-law, faced an impossible task, explaining the inexplicable to a terrorized child. When Ferdinand returned, expecting submission, he encountered an odor that no amount of royal perfume could mask. The young queen, overwhelmed by absolute terror, had lost complete control of her bodily functions. The King of Spain found his wedding bed defiled with human waste. He recoiled in disgust, declaring that queens should possess sweeter fragrances, and stormed out, refusing to approach his bride for an entire week. This catastrophic wedding night represented merely the opening chapter of Maria Josefa's torment. To understand how matrimony could become such a disaster, we must examine what Ferdinand concealed beneath those royal garments. Court physicians who examined the monarch left detailed medical records, describing his condition as rendering normal conjugal relations impossible without causing severe internal injuries to any partner. Ferdinand's first marriage at 17 had been equally disastrous. His cousin, Maria Antonia of Naples, endured 11 months of unconsummated marriage while the prince fumbled unsuccessfully with basic human reproduction. His anatomy was so abnormal that the most fundamental biological function became an impossible puzzle. The young princess wrote heartbreaking letters describing her husband's complete sexual incompetence and her nightly tears of frustration. When Ferdinand finally mastered the mechanics after nearly a year of failures, the consequences proved catastrophic. Maria Antonia suffered multiple miscarriages from internal trauma and died at 21, her body destroyed by her husband's deformity. But rather than tempering his appetites, her death unleashed something monstrous within Ferdinand. The widowed king discovered Madrid's most notorious brothel district, where he assembled a crew of equally depraved young aristocrats. Together, they transformed the city's red-light establishments into their personal playground. Ferdinand took perverse pride in his anatomical curse, turning it into entertainment for his companions. He would challenge them to measurement contests, always emerging victorious, earning the nickname the Well-Endowed One. But Ferdinand's perversion reached truly sickening depths. He collected blood-stained fabric from deflowered virgins as trophies, storing them in labeled silk pouches. Each piece represented a ruined life, servants who couldn't refuse their king, peasant girls from his travels, widows seeking royal mercy. While Spain lost its entire American empire and thousands of liberal reformers faced execution, Ferdinand obsessed over his grotesque hobby. In 1816, desperate for an heir, Ferdinand married his niece, Maria Isabel of Braganza. This 19-year-old Portuguese princess tried bringing dignity to a court drowning in depravity, founding the Prado Museum while her husband continued his nightly brothel raids. When she finally became pregnant in 1818, complications arose immediately during labor. Faced with choosing between saving mother or child, Ferdinand commanded the surgeons to cut her open if necessary. What followed was witnessed by 12 courtiers who left matching accounts of horror. The physicians began an emergency cesarean section with only alcohol for anesthesia. Midway through the procedure, Maria Isabel's eyes shot open and she released a scream that echoed throughout the palace. She was fully conscious as they sliced through her womb. The baby was already dead, had been for hours. Maria Isabel bled to death on the operating table, sacrificed for a stillborn child. She was 21 years old. Ferdinand felt zero remorse. Within months, he was seeking wife number 3, the 16-year-old Maria Josepha, whose wedding night we witnessed. After her horrific introduction to marriage, she spent the next 10 years enduring Ferdinand's advances while reciting the rosary, believing marital relations were sinful lies designed to test her virtue. Even papal intervention couldn't convince her otherwise. She would lie motionless during their encounters, praying continuously, making their relationship the least erotic in royal history. When Maria Josepha died childless in 1829, Ferdinand faced his final chance at 45 years old. His fourth wife, Maria Cristina of Bourbon-II Sicilies, arrived prepared. Unlike her predecessors, this 23-year-old beauty understood that producing an heir required solving an engineering problem. Working with court physician Dr. Antonio Hernandez, they devised an elegant solution, a specially crafted silk cushion with a precisely measured opening that would limit penetration depth, preventing the internal damage that had plagued Ferdinand's previous attempts at procreation. This device worked perfectly. Within 3 months, Maria Cristina was pregnant. In 1830, she delivered a healthy daughter, the future Isabella II. 2 years later, she produced another daughter, Luisa Fernanda. Ferdinand finally possessed his heirs, achieved through 4 marriages, 2 deaths, papal intervention, and a specially designed sexual apparatus. The birth of Isabella created new problems. Spanish law forbade female succession, but Ferdinand, having literally engineered these heirs into existence, refused to let legal technicalities interfere. He overturned centuries of precedent, allowing his daughter to inherit. When he died in 1833, this decision plunged Spain into the bloody Carlist Wars as his brother challenged the succession. After Ferdinand's death, Maria Cristina ordered a discreet inventory of his private chambers. Hidden in a cedar chest, investigators discovered dozens of labeled cloth squares, each representing a destroyed life. The dates clustered around political upheavals, revealing how Ferdinand channeled governmental violence in his sexual brutality. One entry particularly horrified the investigators. Anna, 15 years, daughter of Colonel Bermudez, February 1823. The colonel had been executed for liberal activities. His daughter had begged for his life and left with her father dead and her innocence destroyed. Ferdinand VII died unmourned on September 29, 1833. His own brother immediately declared war. His daughter faced multiple civil conflicts defending the throne he'd manipulated her onto. His widow quickly remarried a common guardsman, scandalizing the nation one final time. But Ferdinand's true legacy wasn't political. It was the transformation of Spanish monarchy from sacred institution into sordid spectacle. Consider that silk cushion for a moment. A king so deformed that normal human reproduction required mechanical intervention. A monarchy so desperate for continuity that it reduced the royal bedchamber to a medical procedure. That device represents everything corrupt about Ferdinand's reign. Power twisted to the point of physical grotesquerie, legitimacy hanging by threads as thin as silk. Perhaps the cruelest irony is this: Ferdinand VII is remembered not for achievements or noble deeds, but for his monstrous anatomy and the suffering it caused. He wanted to be beloved. Instead, he became a cautionary tale about power without humanity, creating monsters. Every historian reaches the same conclusion: cowardly, selfish, suspicious, and vengeful. But they're too generous, because Ferdinand wasn't merely a bad king. He was a predator with a crown, a man who weaponized his deformity, a ruler who collected human suffering like others collected art. His true legacy lies in those burned cloth fragments, the servants who couldn't refuse, the virgins who became trophies, the wives who died or lived in terror. Ferdinand VII proved that monsters don't lurk in shadows or forests. Sometimes they wear crowns and rule nations. Sometimes they're celebrated as kings. And sometimes history remembers them for exactly what they were.